Hello, I hope you got your coffee ready or your tea or your
Yes,
beverage.
I do. Sorry, here it is. A C
I'm
cup.
really pleased to be together again with my friend Cyril Viktor Palacios, and who I had the pleasure of meeting through my good friend Leo Lyons Agami. And we've chatted before, but we talk privately from time to time, and we both thought it'd be a good thing for us to kind of share with the people out there some of the things that we've been discussing that are increasingly relevant as far as what we might call the overall meta narrative, as far as the big picture regarding the events that have been going on for quite some time and are intensifying. And Cyril has been very brave in his willingness to go out into the streets and actually try to talk to these people that are under a trance, basically. They've been hypnotized into believing a pseudo narrative that is just a way of shepherding the population to follow along the storyline that's being force fed to everybody through mass media and all of that. But we want to kind of look under the hood a little bit and the branding that we're giving to what has been going on in the realms of science, which we can only call scientism, and that they've created this like belief system based on false narratives, and that's a major tool of what they're trying to accomplish. So, being that Victor's a noted music producer for film and television and all of that, but he also has a background in physics so that it gives him the language skills to be able to work into certain realms of ideas that most people can't approach. So I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of do a little conversation with him here. How you doing there, Cyril? It's good to see you, buddy.
Thank you, John. Good morning.
Yeah,
Good
good morning.
morning.
It is a good morning. It's
Greetings from Hollywood.
beautiful.
Uh, yeah, thank you. You know what? It's a great honor to be here with you. It's a great honor talking to you. I'm a big fan of your channel and a big fan of the work you do. Uh, and I consider you one of my mentors, and I inspire. I'm inspired by your work and the people you work with. Uh, this is a rather interesting subject that you and I talked before, and now you actually rightfully labeled it scientism, which is it's a phenomenon, but it has been growing for a long time. Before we get into the subject itself, as to how scientism and the mass media come together in uh, broadcasting uh, certain message for political purposes, and it's shocking because suddenly science is no longer about truth; it's more about something else. So let's start with this thought. Today, people accept pretty much everything that says science, a label attached to it with science. They don't question any of it. They don't question what, they say they're experts. Okay, great, we believe everything. So scientism is a bit of it's like a religion almost, thinking of science as something that is infallible. And that is a mistake, because what we are learning now, and is, for example, I did some notes here. There are two camps right now of the science community. There are the scientists who are all about grants. They're all about research and equipment to do this research. And since the beginning of science, equipment and tools have become very important and more expensive. the more we develop technologies, the more tools we need to explore science. One example is, for example, the X-ray. The first X-ray, compared in at the beginning of the century, the first X-ray, the picture compared to an ultrasound today, it's incredible, right? So now we have more need, according to scientists and researchers, we need more need of more funding or more grants for more equipment to look for more things. The biggest machine right now is in Switzerland. It's a Large Hadron Collider, and it's about to be shut down if nothing new comes out of there. And that's a big problem, because that's a big machine. It's going to be a lot of scrap metal if that thing doesn't pay off. Sure, we got the Higgs field and all that, but that's it. So let's talk first about what is the place of science in our society, in humanity. What is its purpose? So there are scientists today, and I did some. Anyone can go on YouTube, by the way, and look this up. Scientism. There are some serious concerns now about two things. One camp is all about research and equipment and getting the money, and another camp is like, this is now going the other way, because now we know. In one of your episodes, which I actually like, John, is about Crown Gate, how our inventions and our patents in America end up being used against us. And the reason why is because people don't question science anymore. And there's a very small group of people, just like a deep state in the government, deep state in church, there's a deep state in academia. And they have a monopoly on the knowledge. And the reason why I think this subject is now coming to the front, it's because the latest episode with science is COVID-19. We are in the middle of it, of something that no one could have imagined that science, or doctors for that matter, would have gotten us to this place. So let's talk about why most people today are wearing masks without questioning anything. Your thoughts, John?
Well, because they believe that's what they're supposed to do.
Because
basically, because they've been force-fed information that is causing them to live in fear. They're protecting themselves and their families, their loved ones, and so forth, so that the people of bad intent, shall we say, can take the good intentions of people and weaponize that and use it against the people. And so consequently, we've been sold a narrative that essentially without them we're doomed. And nothing could be further from the truth when you look at the work that someone like Bill Gates has done, for example, in Africa. He's like Dr. Doom, if anybody is. I mean, he's actually been called out by the president of president of Ghana called out Bill Gates as a fraud, and he did an expose on Bill Gates and the work that Bill Gates was doing with his donations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and all the work they're doing in these massive vaccinations all over Africa, which are leading to complications of disease conditions and sterilization of large sectors of the population. And this is not a new thing, of course. This goes back to the work that was done in South Africa during the Second Boer War, around the turn of the last century, which was done by Burroughs Wellcome, which was a chemical/pharmaceutical company that financed the Imperial Press Conference that put forth the idea of government through journalism, which was something that was uncovered through the work of our associates at American Intelligence Media. our associates over at Americans for Innovation with Michael McKibben,
Mm-hmm.
the actual inventor of social media, who had his invention taken from him by agents of this cabal working through DARPA, who's also behind the CERN science project in Switzerland. And the internet itself is basically a byproduct of that CERN research, because they needed a data system to be able to correlate all the research that was being done about the findings at CERN. And it ended up becoming what it is today, more of almost a commercial venture. And its universal application, because of Michael McKibben's invention, enabled millions of people to be on simultaneously and interact. Before that, you could have at the most in a group, maybe 60 people. And he opened it up so that it was virtually unlimited. And so consequently, now that they have this system up, it's kind of like the snake swallows its tail, because their whole system of technocracy is tied into this self-same internet.
Mm-hmm.
But that internet is what's giving us the freedom to be able to have dialogues regarding what's going on. So it's actually backfiring.
Yes, Michael McKibben is a great example. I want to make sure that we are, at least I don't want to sound like I'm anti-science or anti, discovery. I am pretty much, I mean, I'm a geek. I'm a scientist. I love knowledge and information and things like that. But Michael is one of the good guys. He's he's a talented person, and then they take his discoveries and his knowledge, and they steal it and use it against us. You know what I mean? So it's I think there's somebody out. So we're not anti-science. I'm a born again Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ and everything, but that doesn't make me anti-science. But what I do want to emphasize is that when science found out in 1939, at the beginning of the
You're getting a little
sound.
feedback on your microphone. Just turn your level down a little bit.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Is that good? Is that good?
It's still happening.
That sound, I think it's a, you know what? I'm so sorry. I think it's a leaf blower outside.
Is that what it is? Because
Yeah.
it's kind of an echoey sound. Anyways, continue.
Is that it? Did you hear sound, or is it just me? Let me see. No, it's. Can you hear me?
Well,
is that better? I don't hear you.
Rotating sound.
That's, you know what? Let me see. Hang on. Is it done? Still there?
Still there.
Okay, hold on.
There it is. Yeah, that's it.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So it's a fan or something like that? Yeah.
I got it.
Let's continue on.
Okay. So I'm not anti-science just because I'm a born-again Christian. But I also have the knowledge of questioning things as we evolve with the discoveries of science. For example, remember when we used to think that the Earth revolved around the sun? Right? And the idea that it was the other way. Ooh, you're crazy. Right? Same thing. Oh, well, we're the only ones in the universe. No, there's millions of galaxies. Ooh, now there's quantum entanglement. There's quantum physics and the observer. What does that mean? Oh, the mind is the center of the universe. That's the implication. And then what does that mean? Ooh, consciousness. God. That's a problem. Let's not even go there. Why not? Why are you afraid of? What is the fear? So that is what is so confusing, because you think that is a wonderful thing, you know, to discover that there is something greater that we can rely on. But no, it's the opposite. And so now more and more scientists are coming forward saying this is a problem. Two sides. Scientism is a problem. And the reason why is because it's faith, blind faith in science. And today, we are living in a world in 2020 where pretty much everyone is, as you said earlier, hypnotized because they question nothing. And it's unfortunate because at this point we are about to lose. I mean, our freedom, all of our civil rights are on the table now because the fact that people are scared. They are scared because they're not being told the truth. What do we hear in the news? Someone else was on the podcast the other day saying, "Oh, cases, cases, cases." What cases of what? What cases? What does it mean? Tell me. Oh, cases. But what is it? Oh, TV cases. It's like I'm talking to, you know what I mean? It's almost surreal. No one is dying from this thing. There are no deaths of anything else but COVID, So what's going on here? We have the right to question this scientist, Dr. Fauci, and his things. You know what I mean? Who are these people? Seriously, they don't have the power. If they did, they wouldn't lie to us. That's the issue. Go ahead, John.
Well, the problem has become a question of credibility, because if you've followed the comments of Dr. Fauci, he's been all over the map.
Yeah.
The masks don't help. Wear them, don't wear them. Wear them as a symbol, just back and forth, back and forth. It's like a shell game. They keep moving it around you to try and find the little bean under the shell. And it's like they want to get you so conflicted that you just get fatigued and you go and do something else while they do whatever it is they want to do. And are there people out there that have expired from this specific pathogen? Yes, there are, but it now we know it's less than the seasonal flu. But we know that they've been over-reporting numbers and all that. So I don't even want to get into the whole medical chicanery today. There's a backstory that nobody's talking about. Everybody's talking about that, and there's more than ample information out there to be able to get clarity on that. I mean, just keep your immune system up, get your zinc, get your vitamin D3, vitamin A, and vitamin C to strengthen your immune system. Get plenty of fresh air, take walks, and enjoy the sun. And that puts you in good stead to be protected from most things of that ilk. In any event, what I was intrigued by was some of the things that you were saying about how in science, in physics, for example, that they've kind of reached an impasse. And if you look at things that have come up over the last 30 years or so within physics, that there's this problem with equations that are in science, equations are supposed to work all the time. That's what makes them valid science. But they find that they work with equations in science, and that there's this variability, that they don't always work. And there's the Schrodinger's cat syndrome, that it really throws a wrench into the whole thing, so that consequently your modern physicist, who spends a great deal of his time in dealing with astronomical observations and so forth, that they can't really get a handle on something because they're only working with the material substrata. They don't have the mathematics to be able to take into their equations a living universe.
Well, excellent point. I was telling myself I was not going to bring any math into, because it's hard to bring mathematics into a conversation, equations and things like that. I wasn't going to go too much into the math of what's going on, but I'll give you an example. One example that illustrate. I hope the audience has knowledge of calculus, for example. No calculus to understand what's going on. One of the equations that really broke everything open was the Dirac equation. Paul Dirac's equation used a hack, which Albert Einstein was completely against. Why, you may wonder? Because it requires.
Frozen?
It requires. No, I'm
What
not frozen.
happened here?
I'm here.
I'm
Okay.
back. You'll be back soon.
Okay, great. I'm here.
We got hacked.
Okay. Well, no. Well, yeah. Paul Dirac is I think is the him and Maxwell, who discovered the electromagnetic field. They are the grandfathers. I mean, the godfathers of quantum physics. But Paul Dirac's equation used a hack, and it worked. And it's this hack let's call it faith. It's something that doesn't exist, but it made sense, and it was antimatter. He was able to discover antimatter in this equation. And in fact, what it means is that an electron, a photon, for example, a photon is a visible excitement of light. It's a photon, it's a particle of light. But in order to exist, it comes out of nowhere. It's a zero state, zero momentum and zero energy. Means it doesn't exist. And then it exists out of nowhere. It comes in and out of existence out of nowhere. And there is infinite antimatter for light to even exist in the first place. That meant, literally, that our physical world depends on something we don't see. And that is something Einstein was not going to have. He wanted to, quote, see. He wanted to make sure that things made sense. And this hack of Paul Dirac, which is the reason why we have quantum physics now, and you and I can talk on the internet and everything else, is because this faith hack worked, which was the thought of antimatter. And like those kind of Schrodinger's cats is another example. What does it mean? The cat is dead or alive until you look at it. Wow. What does it mean? A cat is dead or alive at the same time until I look at it to make sure it's dead or alive? Who am I to decide that? That's the question. That's the real big question. That puts you in the middle of the universe. Quantum entanglement, which Einstein called it spooky. Who would scare Einstein? God. So, scientism, it's not necessarily atheism, because you can be a religious person and have scientism. They don't mean that scientism doesn't mean that you have to be atheist. It just means that you have overly tremendous faith in science. And that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of upset that churches are closed without challenging this emperors, governors, that they think they rule they rule the world, and they can just decide who opens a church and who doesn't, and what the Constitution means nothing. Things like, I mean, these people use science as a weapon. And that's what we're dealing with. They have turned on us. We gave them trust. We believed in them. We gave them all the funding because we pay for it. And look what they've done. Remember the Wuhan lab? That's Obama funding. Millions. There's a picture of him and Fauci going, how many people can this kill? I'm not making it up.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. The mathematics point to one direction and one direction only. you ready? Nothing. Today in 2020, we know only 5% of what makes this entire universe. Only 5%. That means that we have 95% of nothing. And Stephen Hawking said, by 2020, we'll know everything. God rest his soul. We don't know anything. In fact, we know nothing. And that's why they're so terrified, because that's the end of grant and the beginning of other grants to do something else. So that's what science is now switching. Let's say global warming, for example, nice term. Let's save the world. Give me more taxes, things like that. So science reached a point where they have, okay, at a macro level, let's say if you look at the universe, you get the cosmic background radiation, which is the light, the flash of the Big Bang, but we don't have enough power or enough telescopes to see far away enough, right? And at a micro level or a quantum level, we have the Schrodinger equation, where we get the best thing of all. The best thing that science can come up with today is probability. We have the probability of finding an electron in this location if we look at it. If we do not look at it, it exists in two states, real and antimatter. Yeah. Where is the antimatter? That's the question. So without going too much into the mathematics, that is the problem with science. Science ran out of power. And this is about power, because the power is who holds the knowledge of the truth. And science, for the longest time, I remember when Darwin was releasing papers, and people were upset about him because he was challenging church, and now we're backwards. Now it's the other way around. So it's time to look at it from honestly, and as Americans, as people who are in the brink of losing our civil rights, we have to be honest about this conversation. And I think that I honestly have a lot of respect for those of you that stand up for truth, that stand up for what is right, and stand up against what the establishment is telling us, which is nonsense. It's not true. I wish it was true, but it's not. So since the beginning of radio, television, now internet, all these mediums, the electromagnetic field, are used for one purpose and one purpose only. It's called influence the citizens for political purposes. That's it. There is no other reason why. That's why you have baseball with Fauci and Black Lives Matter raising their hands or whatever they do. And you know what I mean? It's political purposes. It is not the truth, certainly not in our best interest. So why is everybody just taking it, especially in America, the land of the free? It's embarrassing, quite frankly. So I don't know what to tell you.
Well, going back to some of the comments that you were making early in this last presentation that you just gave, there's a fellow, Owen Barfield, who's a very interesting individual. He's one of the translators of the lectures of Rudolf Steiner.
Oh, wonderful.
He was the editor at Faber and Faber in London, and he lived to be very advanced age, close to 100 years old, I believe.
Nice.
But he was a member of the Inklings, which was a group of Oxford dons that included J.R.R. Tolkien and
nice.
C.S. Lewis and Charles Williams and a lot of other people that would meet in the pub and discuss mythology, philosophy, religion, and ideas in general. And it was a formidable company, but it was an informal meeting on Thursday nights. And Owen Barfield wrote a book that he considered his favorite book. It's called Saving the Appearances, a study in idolatry.
Ah, nice.
He has a certain gift of language, and he wrote a book called History in Words, and he had discovered certain things that led him to believe that there was an evolution of consciousness. And so when he
Hmm.
discovered the work of Rudolf Steiner, who centers so much of his work around the concept of that there is an evolution of consciousness.
Hmm.
And so consequently, Barfield arrived at that of his own work, some of it through studying Samuel Taylor Coleridge. But
Hmm.
Barfield said in the first chapter of Saving the Appearances, he says, look at a rainbow. While it lasts, it is or appears to be a great arc of many colors occupying a position out there in space. It touches the horizon between that chimney and that tree.
Hmm.
A line drawn from the sun behind you and passing through your head would pierce the center of the circle of which it is part. And now, before it fades, recollect all you have ever been told about the rainbow and its causes, and ask yourself the question, is it really there?
Hmm.
And,
Right.
and that's what's happening in physics, because really, if you just get into an atom, and I remember a movie that came out uh, quite a few years ago called Mind Walk, and where the guy starts talking and explains about an atom. He says, well, envision a football field, and you got a few soybeans in the center of the football field. That's your nucleus. And then all this other area, well, that's empty space. So they're dealing with a vast expanse of what they see as nothingness. But in essence, because they're only dealing with its materiality, they have not been able to pierce the veil and see that they're seeing the least part of it. You're seeing the part that hasn't been filtered out through the senses. And so consequently, all they can do is come up with mechanistic concepts of reality that won't work because it's not true. Uh, Reality evolved from consciousness. Consciousness isn't a byproduct of material conditions. It was consciousness that brought into being the universe. See, and that's the difficulty that they have. And they would describe it as antimatter, meaning something that isn't matter, non-matter.
Yeah, well, you brought something up, uh, something very important. I'm glad because if I would have talked about this, I would have been very upset. And I'm so happy that you brought it up. We have to come up with ideas and mathematics how to explain our experience or our senses or what we sense in this physical form. The biggest problem right now, you talked about the atom, inside of an atom, you're in a football field and you have a bunch of soybeans, that's your nucleus. Everything else is empty space, but not really. It's actually an orbital. And if we think of it as a hydrogen atom, which is the number one in the periodic table, if you did your homework, then you realize that it's one electron going like this. That's why the figure of the atom used to look like that. So here's the football field, here's your nucleus, and there is this electron going like this, right? Now, this electron is popping in and out of existence. But the one thing that's most disturbing is that gravity is non-existent at that level. So the biggest shocker to this day is that gravity does not exist. There is no graviton yet. They can smash atoms at CERN hard enough to pop up some particle that would explain gravity. And that's where the beginning of string theory and all that it comes from, because where is gravity? Why do we have Einstein's beautiful theory of relativity and special relativity working wonderfully? And then we have quantum mechanics also working wonderfully. We can do anything with quantum mechanics, telephone, radio, everything, internet, everything, quantum computing. But they don't talk to each other because gravity is not present in the quantum world. What are the implications of that thought? I'm not a scientist and I don't have a grant and I'm not My career is not on the line if I tell you the truth, what it really means. And I will tell you what it really means now, because like I said, I'm a fearless American and we are in a war. So here is the bombshell. Gravity is incidental. Have you ever had a dream, John, that you fell from somewhere, that you're falling? Have you ever had a dream that you're falling and you're about to hit the ground and you don't hit the ground, but you feel you're conscious of you're falling and you feel the fall. Okay. And your body's already in the ground. So your consciousness is elsewhere. And what it means is that when you have an atomic being like ourselves, we are locked into this vessel, but our skin is already electromagnetically charged. That's why lightning can burn you and go through you. So we are already electromagnetically charged. So the only thing between me and you is the illusion of gravity, the illusion that we are separate, because there is nothing in between your mind and my mind, because that's where it's called quantum entanglement takes place. No matter how far away you are from each other, and that's just an electron entangled, one side of the galaxy to the other, they still talk to each other because they are interlocked by something that is greater than matter, in this case light, which is now called the dark matter and dark energy. Dark matter and dark energy. That's what science calls what they don't understand. Dark. Oh, we have dark matter. Oh, great. What does it mean? Oh, it's just something we don't see. Okay, but what does it mean? What is it? What can you possibly, oh, it's consciousness. Okay, great. That makes total sense. Yes, dark matter or dark energy is consciousness, but what does that mean? It means that there is something greater than ourselves conscious of this whole show. And that's it. So if you start science with the observer, you get the whole picture out. If you start science without the observer, you end up with nothing. And that's where we are today. They refuse to look at the facts. Yeah. So that's why they're scared. That's why they don't like it. That's why they're frightened, because all the evidence is pointing out towards non-tangible matter, which in this case is the spiritual world, the world of the consciousness, call it whatever you want. It has nothing to do with religion. It's something else. So that is our goal. I think is for us to let the public know the truth, to be at least aware that you have the freedom to question science, because science today is not on our side. It's working against us. And like I said, I'm not anti-science. I love science, but I am anti-deception. And I think that deception has gone completely out of control.
Yeah, I think that was the point I was trying to make with what is scientism, and it's the kind of taking the modalities of science and using it in a particular way because you have an agenda that you're serving of some sort. You know, in going back to that, let me finish the thought here, and returning to Saving the Appearances from Owen Barfield. He later on in the chapter, he says, a better term than particles would possibly be the unrepresented, since anything particular which amounts to a representation will always attract further physical analysis. Moreover, the atoms, protons, and electrons of modern physics are now perhaps more generally regarded not as particles, but as notational models or symbols of an unknown supersensible or subsensible base.
Mm-hmm.
so that you see that you have the map. It's like taking the map as reality when it's just meant to be a guideline. You have to keep in mind that the scientific method is continually a work in progress and that it's not a completion. It's something that's a continuation. We always, it's like in working in set theory, when you have a closed set, you have all factors that are involved. They use that in electronics where they know all the variables that are going to be involved and they can come up with an equation that will actually serve a function. When you start extrapolating that type of thinking into nature, which is what they did, for example, with global warming. They tried to use an electronic schematic as a way to explain temperature phenomena, but they don't realize, or they tried to obscure the reality that it should be an open set and that there's factors that play into the equation that are not included in the equation. Therefore, the equation is insufficient to be able to give you an accurate result. And so consequently, you're left with this really gray area in which they can inhabit for their own agenda, or it can be inhabited by people just from their lack of knowledge, that they don't have sufficient information to be able to solve the problem. And that's a genuine problem in science, because you find people in science, they become trained and they learn to think along conventional lines. So that if you go into the history of the Industrial Revolution, for example, you'll find, and we found this out in doing our research on the heart project, where we reassessed that the heart is not a pump, that it's something other than a pump. But in doing that research, we found that the history of the Industrial Revolution, the inventions were coming from dissenting ministers. They weren't coming from science people. They were amateur people that were interested in science, but they didn't have the experience of being locked into a formalized box in their thinking, and they were able to come up with unique solutions to challenges that education wouldn't necessarily have helped them if had it been of a more formal nature, where they're expected to go along with the narrative. I mean, I'm reminded of Paracelsus when he came to England and he took the books that they were using for medicine, and he made a big pile on the stage and he set them on fire. He said,
Right.
you got to go back and observe nature. So the real key and the cutting edge in science now is phenomenology, right? That's really where it is, because when you start getting into, say, well, what effect does perception have as far as to being able to assess things in terms of physics? That's phenomenology. And you go, well, is that a reality? Is it a noumena, or is it just an appearance?
Right. The thing is this: what's really discouraging for those of us who we believe in science, we believe in the research, we believe in the discovery, but what's discouraging for us is that there are now sciences for everything. Everything can be science. You can have a science about whatever, emotions, without any sort of kind of real scientific. It's just because if you put a label science, you get the funding, and studies of you know what I mean. It is. If you look at California, for example, the bureaucracy behind this science is so out of control. The corruption, for example, who gets to submit papers in universities, who gets to publish what books get what information, all that is completely monopolized for political purposes. And this doesn't happen in the forefront. This happens in the background. There's a deep state. If you have enough, I want to mention two people. Professor Susan Hack. She's wonderful. She talks a lot about scientism, and she's I consider her a righteous woman, because she is truly someone who is not afraid of speaking the truth of what we're facing with scientism. And this is almost like a cult, and it's sad. And then we have another gentleman, his name is Eric Weinstein, who is also a hedge fund person, and he's also a mathematician, a very bright man. And he also understands the conundrum that we're dealing with this science out of control. And where is it going to stop? When is the wake up going to take place? So we have to realize that from our end, we send our kids to school. I don't have any kids. We send the children to school, and they are basically indoctrinated. By the time you get out of college, oh my goodness, with the liberal arts, I have no idea what's going on. I was at Los Angeles City College, and I left because it was completely out of control. So what I'm saying here is that science is no longer, it's losing its respect, and it's losing its faith and its actual purpose in society. What is science for? Why do we have science in the first place? Great, to help us, medicine, discoveries. I'm gonna say something that Los Angeles, we have Tesla here. We can go to the moon or the Mars, but we haven't fixed the homeless situation. How can that be? We can handle the physical world, no problem, but the spiritual world, the actual soul, the actual life, that scientists will never know where it comes from, because there is no such a thing as scientific knowledge of God, but they don't know where life comes from. So the best idea today, and this is just my opinion, I think that scientists have decided to eliminate God from the picture. I think that they have an agenda to get rid of the truth.
Well, yeah, I mean, that kind of tags on the show I was on yesterday, and I was talking about C.S. Lewis again from the Inklings. He was the biggest radio personality in England in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
He was an atheist who was converted to Christianity through the influence of his friends in the Inklings, J.R.R. Tolkien and Owen Barfield and others. And so he would do these shows on the radio that were just, everybody listened to C.S. Lewis, and the BBC was, I mean, the Brits, they have at that
Mm-hmm.
time, basically that's it. If you're on the BBC, that's it.
Right.
They had it totally under control, because that was really their way of maintaining a control on the ideas that people were contemplating.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was C.S. Lewis coming to understand Christianity, and he starts writing these books that became huge bestsellers, Surprised by Joy, and all of these things that were interesting, in that he came from being an atheist to come into a personal relationship to the reality of Christianity. And so consequently, he knew many of the pitfalls. And like he wrote letters, the Screw Tape letters, okay? And it's like letters from an elder devil to a younger devil, giving him advice on how to deal with humans, which it's a hilarious book, but it's extremely insightful. And so consequently, the forces of materialism that came out of England in the 1840s, that was so powerful and had developed at Oxford at the time he was doing this. Mind you, the scholars in other departments, they hated that he was doing what he was doing. And in the middle of a documentary I was watching on C.S. Lewis, the commentator, one of the scholars who studies the Inklings, and C.S. Lewis in particular, says, and he said, at Oxford they hated Christianity. So that's a real eye opener, that the principal education institution in England, that the so-called leading scholars over there hated Christianity. So what does that mean? I mean, they had become something that's an end result of the intervention of the forces of materialism in thinking. And so consequently, it will be through the awakening of the supersensible, of the awakening of spiritual faculties that extend beyond the material world. That's going to be the redemption. That's our hope. That's what we're going to be finding unfolding in the future. Not without conflict, because we're up against pretty severe forces, and there are forces that attempt to take the whole notion of religion and use that as a political weapon, like the current Pope, who I don't consider him to really even be Catholic or even a Christian in the way in which he goes about his business. So that consequently, everybody has to do a great deal of sifting and evaluation. But on a spiritual level, on a developmental level, actually, that's a good thing. And that's why we're here. There's a reason why you're here now trying to deal with all of this, because this is what we're working on.
I was talking to my mother, who she's in Guatemala City, and I was talking to her about my name. And my middle name is Victor, which means winning the battle against the enemy. And that's victory, winning the battle against the enemy. And my first name is Cyril, which is Lord. It comes from Greek, but it is Lord. There's a few saints with the name. So Lord, winning the battle against our enemies. So the enemies of truth are our enemies. And what happens is that science is denying on purpose the truth. So as long as we are under their spell, and I don't want to talk negatively about, why are we in this conundrum since the Bible's been around for so many years? Why do we have to have, why haven't we not wake up earlier? What, and what it is that our faith in science, television, all HD color looks really nice. It's very distractive. And that's why they are distracting us from the truth. That's why Hollywood is such a big deal, and the sports and stuff, and it's really shiny and everything is bright because it's a distraction. And also we are human beings don't want to work too much. It's a lot of work, to be honest. It's a lot of work to tell the truth. It's a lot of work to challenge yourself. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about that because spirituality is a discipline, and so is science. They're both disciplines in their own right. One of them deals with the physical world. One deals with the non-physical world. I speak about the 7 powers because the 7 powers are on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and those are the 7 powers of the mind: thought, will, life, understanding, perception, prudence, and grace. Those 7 things don't happen in physical world. These are thoughts and state of mind. It's a state of mind. So the thought is the beginning. It's the first power. Where does the thought come from? You don't need an atom. You don't need a microscope to find the thought. You could find it with quantum physics if you start looking into a Schrodinger equation. Oh, there it is.
I think.
Right. The cat is alive. Look, I just opened the box. You know what I mean?
It's again the box, and Owen Barfield makes in his book History in English Words. He makes the point. He says, we can only cope with the dangers of language if we recognize that language is by nature magical and therefore highly dangerous. And so I mean, somebody could be really taken aback by that statement, but when you see how powerful words are, and that they're able to, they're what Owen Barfield likes to use a word called forgative.
Right.
They're able to shape uh, your approach to the world by the way they use language. And now they've got us into all this social media, and so everybody's forced to, come up with something they can say in 150 words or less, or characters or less. And and Rudolf Steiner was very clear. He says that the path of materialism, the path of the aromatic spirits, is a path that consists and is put forward through short thinking. And materialism always wants to get to the point. It's like they want this short thinking, because when you look at, like, even just like a plant, you look at a seed and there's nothing in the seed that tells you what the plant is going to look like, unless you know your seeds, right? But you can look at a seed, and then when it first comes out of the ground, there's just like two little leaves. Well, it's still not telling you what it's going to look like, because all plants basically look the same when they first pop out of the ground. And then the whole symphony begins, and the plant, which will develop out in ratios that reflect great astronomical cycles and planetary harmonies, the music of the spheres, so to speak. Then you see revealed this appearance, and the meaning of that appearance cannot be ascertained from looking just at the seed. And that's the problem that physics deals with, is they want everything in the universe to conform to the ideas they have about a seed. And you just take all the things that are in the seed and you do your computations, and therefore, 1 million years from now it'll be like this. They don't have a clue about how the life is lifted out of that seed through things that are super sensible, the etheric world of life.
Just the process. I was in Lake Tahoe during 4th of July. If just thinking about the process of photosynthesis, if you understand photosynthesis, what that process is, in school they just go through photosynthesis, but if you really think about the quantum physics of photosynthesis, it'll blow you away. It's beyond anything you can imagine out there in the universe. I'm talking right here on the earth. The process of photosynthesis is nothing less than a magnificent miracle.
Yeah.
I always, when I speak to mathematicians or people that don't believe, or what people have faith in science, I said, who decides how many eyes you get in this lifetime? Why are you not in control of your memory? Who are you not to control your memory?
Yeah.
You're nothing. If I had the power to control my memory, some people do, so clairvoyance and stuff, but just think about it. It will be deadly. Someone smarter than me thought about it.
Yeah, it's funny because memory is a very elusive thing. For example,
my favorite subject.
Were you to undergo hypnosis, they could take you back to where you were swaddled in a blanket in your mother's arms as you were driving on a vacation, and you drove by a road sign, and you'd be able to retrieve what that sign said because you looked at it as an infant. Okay. But so that somehow, some way, that's in you, but you don't remember it. So that you have at your disposal, so to speak.
But it's not a physical thing.
It's its existence within your memory. Is it physical? No.
Right. It's
It's
a thought.
obviously not like some chemical compound that's
Right.
stored in a neuron
That's
somewhere.
what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not a filing cabinet. Oh, here's the memory.
Yeah.
It's
So consequently, when we look at these things, they because the only tools they have to work with are physical, they have difficulty in dealing with the reality. Because the reality includes the supersensible, includes the things that you can't see with your physical senses that act upon the visible world in a way that's very, very mysterious. It could be observed, and that's the essence of Goethean science. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was the father of morphology, of the concept of metamorphosis, and he was able to work with those ideas in a way that was more organic and tied into phenomenology rather than some kind of abstract form of thinking. And that problem with science today is the problem also in philosophy. I remember an article a few years back, quite a few years back, and it was the head of the philosophy department at U of M here in Michigan. And he's saying, well, it's become really difficult being the department head because they all the different schools of philosophy have their own proprietary language, and therefore they can't talk to each other.
right, right. Yeah, I'm going to talk to you like Jesus. Check this out. Scripture gives us the power to go way up, way up. The kingdom of God is like a tree. This is written, by the way. If you think about it, the kingdom of God is like a tree. The kingdom of God is not visible, but it's like a tree. So, what is a tree? A tree has roots. A tree has soil. A tree has a trunk that supports the branches, that support the leaves, that give rise to the fruit, that gives rise to more life. The kingdom of God is like a tree, but it's not visible. He said, I am the branches. I mean, he said, I am the tree, you are the branches, he said. Literally, in a spiritual sense, our power comes from the tree, and the tree comes from its power. So that is the analogy that can describe what the kingdom of God, why we don't see, or the dark matter, or whatever you want to call it, is that. And just to understand, then starting with photosynthesis, for example, in a tree and what it does and the life and fruit, that is exactly what takes place within the spiritual world, within our souls. And when we start with that, then the whole show comes into picture. All of a sudden, Schrodinger's cat is neither there or alive. I just haven't looked at it. Go.
Yeah, well, that brings to mind one of the other members of the Inklings was Charles Williams, who was really a fascinating individual who wrote like Arthurian fantasy novels and poetry. And he was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and other various, like the Salvator Mundi Temple of the Fellowship of the Rosy Cross. So he was very much into Hermetic and Kabbalah and that whole type of magical thinking, which very much ties into linguistic as a tool, a magical tool. And he talked about what he called co-inherence. And co-inherence is a word that you rarely will hear, but it was a term that came out of the church fathers. And it's meant to describe the relationship between a human being and the divine natures of Jesus Christ, and the relationship between the three aspects of the Trinity.
Hmm.
And he says to that point, he says, the thread of the love of God was strong enough to save you and all the others, but not strong enough to save you alone. I mean, you see that there's that whole contact point at which our Christ relationship is something that we are, in essence, codependent with each other. We have a certain custodial relationship with the world in which we live, and we can't just save ourselves alone. I'm gonna save myself. Leave all you other guys behind. It doesn't work that way, and because it's remember in the Gospel of John it says God is love, and love is mentioned 17 times in the Gospel of John, which is more time than it's mentioned in the whole of the Quran. So consequently, you could see that the real thrust of the mission of Jesus Christ is to bring fruition to the mission of love and what that may entail. But it has to do with something that's about your relationship to others. It's an interrelational thing. It's not just a personal experience of I am loved. It's not, although the baby steps begin with self-love, the Luciferic self-love, it's not until you get beyond self-love to where you see your responsibility towards others, and that becomes what's known as the path of the Johannine path, which is just try once a day to do something for somebody you don't know, where you don't have anything to gain, and that will put you in touch with a certain sensibility that there's this connectedness to the other, that it's not entirely distant. Like Jesus says, whenever two or more are gathered in my name, I am in the midst of them. So what do? They say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't go to church. And especially you can't go to church and sing. That's taboo.
Right. Especially in California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It tells you where they're at.
Yeah. And to me, this is the real payoff of having you touched on love, but before we get into the biblical aspect of love is extremely important. There's love of money, and then there is selflessness. The altruistic sort of selflessness love idea does come from Jesus. That's the example of God's love, meaning that and most people don't know this because scripture is rather it gives you hints, but there is so much more to it. For example, the resurrection. People talk about death and the crucifixion, but what about the resurrection? What does that even mean? What does it mean to be resurrected? What does it mean to live forever? What does it mean to never die? I said, when I was talking to my mom, she said, I'll take that to my grave. I said, what grave? I said, this rotten carcass has been rotting there for a long time. So, we move, we transcend the physical world into a greater reality. And we realize now and today in 2020 that the physical world is limited, very limited, starting with gravity for that matter. Limited with gravity, limited with resources. That's why the powers of being, scientists, are now on a power grab of humanity. The whole world. Check this out. I had a vision the other day. I go out and walk in LA in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. And now that there's the lockdown, only the really, really mentally challenged are out there. And it's one of the most eye-opening experiences for me because it's apocalyptic in one way, but even in that place, you see love and you see God's love. And the reason why I bring this up is because I was my heart was like, this is uncomfortable. But on the other side, I have to have faith that is God's will. So my mind went from looking at the reality to going inwards into God's presence and that state of grace, which is everything is fine. And when I was grateful for that access to that grace, I felt like my spirit was lifted above the clouds, and I saw the whole earth. And what was shocking, it was like I was not dreaming. I saw this, and I was walking in LA, and I saw the three-dimensional aspect of the clouds as if I was not quite as far as the space station, but not as close as an airplane. I was in between. I was above the clouds, but not too far. And then I saw the clouds three-dimensionally kind of building up to space. And then I saw God's love protecting the whole world. The whole world. All of it. With his hands and his love. And I wept because I said, thank you, Lord. You love us all. It is his love for everyone. How can I, when I shared that with my mom, she's like, you are blessed because you've got to grasp a little bit of what is God's love, a tiny little bit. So we are in a crossroads where science has gone into a place of denial, and it's working against us as human beings globally. So we need to address that, and I think that the truth is on our side. That's why I keep saying they're using. If the truth was on their side, they will simply say, "Put a mask, shut up, or I'll kill you." That's the truth, but they don't have that power.
Well, one way to look at it is that it's kind of like in the Wizard of Oz when you pull back the curtain. There's just this little old man pulling levers,
right?
And it's like a while ago they figured out that they were wrong, but they just can't admit it because they're going to lose all their grants. They're going to this whole superstructure, this belief system in which they've had such an existence for so long is crumbling around them, and they're not strong enough to tell you what's actually going on.
And these are doctors. These are people with property, houses, kids in college, blah, blah, blah. They don't want to give any of that up. Yeah. None of it. They work really, really hard for it to get into that little exclusive Harvard club, the club that no one can get in. But, by the time you get in there, you're no longer human, So, again, the material world, there is that place. If your whole life is about homes and science and all that stuff, of course you're not going to give that up. For who? For nothing. So that's why we have that problem right now. Every doctor, every pharmaceutical company, everything that has to do with healthcare, is in on it. They're all in on it. So that's the big problem right now. So on the one hand, we got God's love protecting us against these creatures because they are our enemies, and we are going to win this battle because they had the floor for a long time.
Yeah, well, again, Owen Barfield in a work, Night Operation, he says, when the velocity of progress increases beyond a certain point, it becomes indistinguishable from crisis.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's where we are right now.
It's brilliant. Bravo.
Acceleration. We're reaching that null point. It's like it's this Nautilus spiral, and it accelerates and it accelerates and accelerates, and you have to run just to stand still. And when actually what should be going on is people are able to find the stillness and participate in that realm of love that Christ represents. And he said, when Christ says, I am the door, he doesn't mean he's just a door. He means he's the point of entry at which you could find that thing, that great solvent that's going to be able to bring you into a wholesome relationship to the world around you. And it begins with consideration for others. But you can't set it up as this kind of political governmental system. We're going to force you to be good to other people, so you don't have any choice. We've decided, you can't say that anymore. That's going to hurt somebody's feelings and all that kind of crazy nonsense. It doesn't make any sense because it's not real. And there's an old saying of the Eastern gurus: if you always speak the truth, then what you say will become true. And so there's a certain power in truth, but truth is limited by our capacity to understand, our ability to receive. And that's the mystery of the Grail itself, isn't it? It's the capacity to be able to be receiving something. And so consequently, as one approaches the truth, the more closely that one can approach the truth, the more resonant you are with the reality, the more power that you have. And so consequently, people who worry about these adversaries, the devils and, Ahriman, Satan, Lucifer, and all these characters, Christ is infinitely more powerful than all
Oh,
those,
yeah.
because they depend on falsehood to be able to put forth their narrative, see, because their narrative is only a partial narrative. The big picture is represented by the Logos himself, which is Jesus Christ. And he has already done the job, and all you need to do is bring yourself into participation with that level of consciousness that he represents, where you become a corpuscle in the body of Christ.
I have a question for you, John. What do you think is the truth? What is it?
It's actually, I look at truth as a verb rather than a noun, so that it has to do with something that, like everything else, goes through a metamorphosis. What was true for somebody 300 years ago can not necessarily be true for somebody today in the same way. So there's a continual modification that has to do with the modifications of the mind. Now, if you go and say, okay, well, meditation, the essence of meditation, according to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, is the cessation of the modifications of the mind, right? And what does that bring you? Well, Jesus said, if therefore thine eyes be single, thy body shall be filled with God's light. So you say, okay, so that's the ultimate experience of enlightenment and higher consciousness. But it's not this false light, this false Luciferic light that casts the dark shadow of Ahriman. It's the light that casts no shadow.
Right. Okay. The reason why I asked that question, because there's two reasons. One is that it was the last thing Jesus said. He actually, the answer, Pontius Pilate is the one who said, what is the truth? For me, my opinion, the truth is simple. It's very simple. The truth is something, I'm going to repeat it. The truth is something no one can deny. No one can deny. Not even me. In the sense that something takes place and no one can deny it. That was the beginning of scientism. The science became the truth until because oh yeah, look, we have the truth, we have the science, we have the evidence, we have the mathematical equations. Here's the truth, here's the truth, here's the truth. Okay, great. Then we get to the Schrodinger equation. Oops. What is the truth now? What can you not deny, Albert Einstein? Come on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
why, to me, and that's why, like my first book, which is like some 640 pages, it's exploration in non-closure, because really
right.
The problems that science has is when they go, aha, closure. I found the answer. because then more information comes on and they have a revised edition that comes out the following year, and on and on, and it's gone on ever since they began writing those books. They're continually having to be revised because new information becomes available. And Rudolf Steiner talked about the problem in education is that teachers are not giving small children ideas to work with that they don't understand at the level they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So that later in life, as they develop, they can look back on childhood and they can have that aha moment. They can say, Eureka, I finally have figured out what my teacher was trying to tell me. And then it becomes something that's involved in this process of the quest, of the unfoldment. And so consequently, consciousness is a continual unfolding. And the I was created by light to receive light. So in order to be able to take up certain thoughts, you have to bring it upon yourself to create something to receive the thought. If you don't have the language skills, can you think the thought? Not in terms of language, you can't. See? So consequently, what do? They start destroying language so that your average individual, what do they got? They got 2,200 word vocabulary, of which they repeatedly use maybe 600 words. Whereas the works of Shakespeare, there's over 10,000 words used. So there's been this diminishment of language, the being of language.
Yeah.
So that's become very, very problematical. Now, we're getting near the end here, and I want to make sure that I give people an opportunity to be able to keep in touch with your way of thinking. So is there anything that you would like to share to anybody that would make it possible for them to be able to follow you in your efforts?
Well, yeah, I have a podcast. You were in it, and I'm going to release it shortly. Right now, I was a Hollywood sound engineer and all that stuff, and since the beginning of 2020, my life changed. The lockdown, the virus, and suddenly, I became a U.S. citizen under Donald Trump in 2017, which is one of the most powerful things I've ever done in my life. I became U.S. citizen because of righteousness, and suddenly I felt like a Chinese slave. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying it. And I'm like, I didn't become a US citizen to be a Chinese slave. And I'm going to fight. And I have infinite power because it's not from me, but from God himself. And it's the truth. And one of the most famous things that Jesus said is, the truth shall set you free. If you knew the truth about carrying this stupid mask on your face, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't understand, because it's not about health. It's about compliance. I went to Ralph's the other day. I don't think it was a homeless guy. It was actually a young person, but he didn't have a mask. And the security guy goes, "No mask, no entry." And there was one on the floor. He just grabbed it and put it on. "Come on in." No problem. I mean, you have to be like, how disconnected do you have to be from reality to not pause for 1 second and think and process? It's called logic. It's called reasoning. Okay, the process of reasoning is an equation itself, and Western thought process is that. Most people don't understand where it comes from. Most people don't understand, for example, Socrates and his arguments about the truth. So I stopped and I saw that. And I said, my goodness, if this was about health, if just think about it, if it would have been about health, where would we be right now?
Yeah, that's very true.
But guess what? The virus is bullshit, because even if you get it, you'll live. 99.9% guaranteed. So
no matter how much they fudge the figures up, that's the way it's looking. And there's
that's the truth.
work that's come out of Switzerland and out of Germany, where they're saying, "Hey, wait a minute, we're making a mistake here. We're taking actions and we're doing the wrong thing in the face of this." But they want to have everybody captured so that they go, "Oh well, we have to vote electronically," because they want Bill Gates counting.
I got my ballot on the mail from Eric Garcetti, and then I got an email the same freaking day. Don't go out, and don't go out, and he says this chart, like the red. It says you can protest is green, right? So you can go out and protest, and you COVID safe. You can be with a bunch of people. You can be COVID safe. Then you go back to voting, red, big no.
Yeah, yeah, it's all about control.
Yeah, but thank you.
I can't thank you enough. I do want to share with people. Here is my first book, The Arcana of the Grail Angel, The Spiritual Science of the Holy Blood and of the Holy Grail, a study developed out of the work of Rudolf Steiner of the underground streams of esoteric Christianity, which flowed from the Brotherhood of the Holy Grail to the Order of the Knights Templar and the True Rosicrucian Order. And then there's the sequel, The Arcana of Light on the Path.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's a meditative tool. And you can find those on eBay. And don't go looking on Amazon. They might be asking $1,000 for a copy, although I heard that went away. But it comes and goes. I see it from time to time.
Wow.
But if you want to find links on it, you can look beneath this video in the comments or in my text beneath the video. It gives you links to go to that. And so I'm really, really honored to be able to share this cup of coffee with you and discuss some of these difficult subjects. It's really difficult. Well, God is simple, man is complex. And so we develop these complex issues when we should allow ourselves to kind of reside in the warmth of the spirit of God's love. And I think that will help us find the answers that we're looking for. And I think you probably agree with me.
I agree 100%. And I can tell you this, I pray to God every day that I meet more people like yourself that are enlightening, that are righteous, and that are inspiring, So you're leading the way to many of us, and hopefully we'll inspire others at the same time to wake up and follow the truth, because the truth is something no one can deny. And we're looking at it right now. And if you want scientific evidence, the evidence will tell you the truth. And the truth is that we are now in a fight for our freedom in America.
Yeah, that's true. The elites want to turn the world into a theme park for their own entertainment. And so
I don't even want to think about it.
we have to take back the world. We have to save the appearances. Anyways, thank you so much, Cyril.
God bless you, John. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.